Let me be brutally honest with you for a moment. What I'm about to tell you will not be on the evening news. It won't be in your mainstream financial headlines, and your local bank teller will likely look at you with a blank stare if you ask about it. But that is precisely the point, because what happens in the shadows of high finance often dictates the realities that the rest of the world only gets to see months or even years later. And right now, in the back-end systems of several major but strategically chosen U.S. financial institutions, a silent switch has been flipped, an internal protocol has been activated, and the digital pathways for two of the world's most watched exotic currencies, the Iraqi Dinar and the Vietnamese Dong, have been quietly illuminated, signaling a preparedness that has never been seen before at this scale. This isn't about a public announcement or a press release. This is about the operational groundwork, the kind of boring, technical back-end work that happens only when a significant financial event is not just a possibility, but a logistical certainty being planned for. And the sources feeding this information are not random social media gurus, but individuals embedded within the financial technology and compliance sectors who are seeing the codes, the currency flags, and the internal liquidity, buffers for IQD and BND being pre-positioned, which tells us one thing with startling clarity. The machinery for a potential revaluation is not just being discussed in boardrooms, it is being physically and digitally assembled inside the very banks that would facilitate it. Think about it like this. A major airport doesn't announce a new international route the moment the idea is conceived. First, the control tower updates its software to recognize the new flight codes. The ground crews are trained on the specific aircraft. The fuel trucks are scheduled, and the gates are allocated, all before a single ticket is ever sold to the public. And what we are witnessing right now with the Dinar and the Dong is the financial equivalent of that precise, meticulous, and utterly silent preparation phase, where the digital gates and fuel trucks of the banking world are being put in place. The brilliance of this strategy, and the reason it's so deliberately under the radar, is to prevent a catastrophic market frenzy. If every single person holding Dinar rushed to their bank at the exact same moment the new rate was publicly declared, the system would simply collapse under the sheer weight of the transactions, creating chaos and undermining the entire economic objective. So by pre-activating these internal systems, banks are creating a controlled, manageable pipeline, allowing them to process what they anticipate will be an unprecedented volume of exchanges in a staggered, orderly fashion. Now, you might be asking, how can we possibly know this is happening if it's so secret? The evidence is circumstantial but powerfully consistent. We are seeing a coordinated surge in very specific technical inquiries from U.S. banks to their international counterparts regarding clearance procedures for large volumes of Iraqi and Vietnamese currency. We are hearing from employees in operational roles about unexpected software updates that include enhanced functionalities for these specific currencies. And most tellingly, we are correlating this with a noticeable shift in the language used by certain financial controllers, moving from outright dismissal of the topic to cautious, legally vetted phrases like contingency planning for potential global currency events. This is the calm before the storm, the digital deep breath the entire system is taking. And if you are holding these currencies, this is the most critical period you will ever experience, because the next phase, the one that follows this silent activation, is the phase where this abstract preparation becomes tangible, personal, and undeniably real for you. And that phase involves a direct signal that will appear not in a news article, but in the one place you check every single day, your own personal bank account. So if the first act of this financial drama was the silent backstage preparation by the banks, then what we are now entering is the moment the first actors are called to their marks under the dim glow of the stage lights. And this manifests in the most personal and psychologically powerful way possible. The appearance of what seasoned observers are calling test transactions or ghost credits in the bank accounts of a select eligible group of holders, which is the ultimate signal that the entire mechanism is not just powered on, but is actively being tested under real-world conditions before the main event goes live for everyone. Imagine waking up, checking your online banking as you always do, and seeing a pending transaction for a life-changing sum of money, credited from a source you don't immediately recognize, with a memo field that might say something cryptic like Forex test or INTL settlement verification, only for that transaction to vanish a few hours later, leaving no trace but a seismic shift in your own certainty about what is coming. This is not a glitch, it is not a mistake, and it is absolutely not a random event. This is the banking system's final, most critical dress rehearsal, a deliberate and controlled stress test of its own infrastructure, its compliance protocols, and its communication channels, all designed to answer one paramount question. When the real, irreversible funds hit, will the entire system hold up without buckling? The genius of this strategy is its deniability. For the banks and the authorities, every single one of these ghost transactions can be explained away as a system test, a procedural drill, or a technical anomaly, thereby avoiding any panic or premature media scrutiny. But for those who receive them, the message is unequivocal and earth-shattering. You are in the system, your currency has been validated, your account has been flagged as ready to receive, and the long-awaited moment is not just near, it is functionally inevitable. The selection of who receives these test transactions is not random either. Analysis of reports flooding in from private forums and vetted groups points to a pattern targeting individuals whose holdings have been properly documented, who have a longer history with the currency, and whose banks have completed the deepest level of internal system upgrades, effectively creating a tiered rollout that prioritizes order and verifies the process with the most straightforward accounts first. This is where the psychological warfare, both intentional and systemic, truly begins, because the disappearance of that pending fortune creates a cognitive dissonance that is incredibly difficult to process, forcing you to question your own eyes and your own sanity, which is precisely why understanding this phase is your greatest weapon against doubt and fear. You must recognize this vanishing act not as a failure or a cruel hoax, but as the single most confirming piece of evidence you will ever receive before the final curtain rises. The system is literally whispering to you, showing you a glimpse of your future to ensure you are prepared, both logistically and mentally, for the permanent reality that is about to replace it. Think of it as the final countdown, but one that is silent and visible only to those who know where to look and how to interpret the signs. And this leads us to the most critical and explosive question of all, the one that every single person who has ever believed in this investment is asking right now. If the banks are ready and the test transactions are beginning, what is the final immovable trigger? What is the one event, the last domino, that needs to fall in Baghdad or Hanoi or Washington, D.C., that will convert these phantom test numbers into permanently settled, life-altering wealth in your account? And more importantly, what are the 3 undeniable signs you must watch for in the next 48 to 72 hours that will prove this is finally, undeniably real? The final trigger, the last domino that transforms this silent, digital preparation into a public, global financial reality, is not a single button pressed in a dark room, but rather the confluence of 3 critical and irreversible events that are converging right now, creating a perfect storm of economic and political necessity that will force the hand of the global financial powers that be. And the first and most crucial of these is the imminent compliance of Iraq with Chapter 7 of the International Monetary Fund's Articles of Agreement, specifically the removal of their exchange restriction status, which is the final technical barrier that has legally prevented the dinar from being traded at its true, unmanipulated market value. And we are receiving verified reports from Baghdad that the final pieces of financial legislation, particularly the anti-money laundering and terrorism financing laws, have not only been passed but are now being actively enforced to a standard that satisfies the last of the Washington-based objections, effectively removing the final excuse for maintaining the artificial program rate. This technical compliance unlocks the second and most powerful trigger, the activation of the strategic economic partnerships Iraq has quietly been negotiating with global superpowers, specifically China and Russia, through their Belt and Road Initiative, and bilateral oil agreements, which are fundamentally predicated on a stable and significantly stronger Iraqi currency to facilitate direct, de-dollarized trade, meaning that the RV is no longer just a matter of wealth for speculators, but a cornerstone of a new multipolar global economic order that is actively challenging the dominance of the U.S. petrodollar system. And this geopolitical pressure creates an unstoppable force that makes the revaluation an absolute geopolitical imperative, far beyond the hopes of individual investors. The third and final trigger is the internal pressure within the United States banking system itself, which you are witnessing firsthand with these test transactions. The system is now primed, the internal protocols are live, and the operational cost of maintaining this state of high alert readiness is immense, creating a financial imperative of its own. Banks cannot indefinitely sustain this level of operational overhead without realizing the transactional revenue that the actual RV event will generate, meaning the system itself has reached a point of critical mass where not moving forward would be more costly and disruptive than pulling the final trigger. These three forces, technical compliance, geopolitical necessity, and internal banking pressure, have created a lock and key situation where the outcome is now mathematically and politically inevitable, and the timeline is measured not in months or years, but in days. So what does this mean for you right now in this very moment? It means that the period of watching and waiting is officially over and has been replaced by the period of vigilant readiness. You must become a master of observation, scrutinizing every piece of information, not with hopeful desperation, but with the calm, analytical eye of someone who knows the outcome is secured. Your focus must immediately shift from if to how, and this is the most important transition you will ever make. You need to have your documents physically organized and readily accessible. You need to know the exact procedure for your specific bank. You need to have a clear and lunging plan for your newfound wealth that is based on wisdom and not emotion. And you must be psychologically prepared for the initial wave of disbelief and chaos that will inevitably follow the public announcement. This is the final stretch, and your actions in the next 48 to 72 hours will define the quality of your outcome for decades to come. This is not the time to be passive. This is not the time to second guess the evidence you have been presented with. The banks are ready. The geopolitical stage is set. The triggers are being activated. The only remaining variable is you. Your journey, your patience, and your belief have brought you to the precipice of a new life. Now you must take the final, deliberate step across the threshold. Do not let this moment pass you by. Click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell right now, because the next update I release will be the most important video you will ever watch in your entire life. It will be the confirmation that the event is live, and it will contain the critical, step-by-step instructions you need to navigate the first 24 hours successfully. Your future self will thank you for taking this simple, decisive action today. Be ready.